Number 10. Arrowverse. Similar to the comics, CW's Arrowverse has also had their own version of the Suicide Squad team. This version was as equally dark as the comic book version, though not quite as twisted. Tara Strong did the voice for the Harley we saw locked up in the show, but was not the actress that we briefly saw in those shots. This team used to be led by Amanda Waller and featured Deadshot, Shrapnel, and Bronze Tiger. No Harley. However, leadership was later taken over by Oliver Queen's partner John Diggle and his wife Lila Michaels, aka Harbinger, with the roster also being changed to feature Jericho, Cupid, and China White. Number 9. Blackest Day. We don't really get to see this version of the Suicide Squad, alas. We just get to hear instead about their tragic fate. In the DC House of Horror comic special, we get a collection of horror stories set in the DC world, and what we can safely assume are alternate spooky universes. Ooh. One story even features an alternate version of famed Squad member Harley Quinn, where she is a ghost who haunts a man and drives him insane, making him kill tons of people, and all the while teasing him. Typical Harley. In the story Blackest Day, a zombie apocalypse has overrun the world, and Harley Quinn and all of the other members of Amanda Waller's Suicide Squad are confirmed dead by John Constantine, who sends a communique to the Justice League Watchtower before himself being overrun by zombies. It turns out that the Justice League themselves have already been overrun, with Flash infecting them with the virus out on the Watchtower. Number 8. Deceased Hope at World's End. While this series is a little more optimistic than most compared to some of the other DC stuff, it features 2 surviving members of the Suicide Squad, the new Suicide Squad, Aerie and Wink. In this alternate universe, the 2 characters are still alive but are faced with the semi-zombie apocalypse whose infection has reached everywhere via the life equation. This is one of those times when flight powers and functional wings like Aerie's really do come in more handy, even though I usually rag on that ability sometimes. Especially when you have all those unliving just trudging around down there on the ground. Unfortunately, while Aerie and Wink continue to stay safe while searching for Nightshade and Hive in issue number 4 of Hope at World's End, the pair run into an infected Black Adam, who can also fly of course, and all of the infected population of Kahndaq.
But in at number 7 is the Squadron Sinister. The Squadron Sinister was a whole team of supervillains created by the Grandmaster as basically copies of the Squadron Supreme of Earth 712. He turned people from Prime 616 universe into counterparts of those Squadron members. These were Kenji Abatu, who became Dr. Spectrum, Kyle Richmond, who became Nighthawk, and Jim Sanders, who became Whizzer, aka Speed Demon. But he also created a version of Hyperion out of non-living extra-dimensional matter. Now, if you know anything about this group of heroes, then you know they are essentially a Marvel Comics parody of versions of DC's Justice League. So then, the Grandmaster pitted this very new powerful squadron against the Avengers in a game against Kang the Conqueror in Avengers number 70. And while they were defeated, they put up a hell of a fight, and if it weren't for the fact that they are villains, there's a possibility they could have came out on top in a different turn of events. And at number 6 though is the Crime Syndicate of America. Why talk about the Marvel version of the evil Justice League when we can just talk about the actual evil Justice League? I don't believe I ever said we had to talk strictly about Marvel villain teams here. Anyways, no. DC's Earth 3 is home to the Crime Syndicate of America, an evil, power-obsessed, and incredibly powerful version of the Justice League that were even strong enough to almost completely take over the actual Earth Zero of DC Comics. Where the Squadron Sinister has Hyperion, who is basically a poo-poo version of Superman, the Crime Syndicate has an actual kryptonite-addicted Superman who pushes around the moon. But on top of that, they have Deathstorm with the Firestorm Matrix powers, Grid, which is basically Cyborg, Johnny Quick, the homicidal Flash, the cowardly Power Ring, who would probably fall to the Avengers honestly, Superwoman, who while extremely powerful was also extremely manipulative, and obviously Owlman, Thomas Wayne Jr., and his sadistic version of Alfred Pennyworth. I would actually love to see how the Avengers fare against this group of villains, because I think it would be really interesting. Let me know your thoughts down below. And in at number 5 is the Masters of Evil. The Masters of Evil have actually had about 8 different incarnations over their time in Marvel Comics, and because of that, they've had a large handful of powerful members that have gone up against the Avengers, Thunderbolts, and even the Guardians of the Galaxy. The original group was brought together by Baron Heinrich Zemo after he learned that Captain America had returned to the world. He put together a group of the Avengers' various teammates' different villains. So, on this original team, we had Black Knight Nathan Garrett, Melter, and Radioactive Man, and they chose to attack with Adhesive X, which was basically super glue, which I know how this sounds, but I promise they got way better. Allow me to list some of the other villains that have been a part of the Masters of Evil. We have Enchantress, Executioner, Ultron 5 as the Crimson Cowl, Dr. Octopus, Atlas, Absorbing Man, Bi-Beast, Bloodstone, Firebrand, Hellstrom, Claw, Moonstone, Satanish, Scorcher, Whiplash, Titania, Wonderman, The Wrecking Crew, and Yellowjacket. And that's just the big names that stand out to me. Of course, these are all in different combinations with varying levels of effectiveness, but if coordinated properly, they have given the Avengers a tough time in the past, and they very likely could do it again. And in at number 4 is the Army of Evil. Is this cheating? Possibly. Do I care? Nope. Get at me, haters. The Army of Evil was essentially Baron Helmut Zemo taking his reformed Masters of Evil and creating an even bigger team of villains, all for the purpose of helping to expand the power and reach of his arch nemesis, Captain America. What? Yes, this wasn't the Captain America we are used to. This was an evil, twisted version of Captain America who was loyal to Hydra thanks to the Red Skull and his use of a sentient cosmic cube named Kobik. And that was only because Marvel decided to make Steve Rogers loyal to Hydra and then realized that no one wanted that. This Army of Evil consisted of Zemo and the current Masters of Evil alongside Absorbing Man, Baron Blood, Blackout, Blue Streak, the Circus of Crime, Count Nefaria, Cyclone, Dragonfly, Pharah, Graviton, Grey Gargoyle, Gypsy Moth, Hobgoblin, Jack-O-Lantern, Kraven the Hunter, Lady Bullseye, Living Laser, Madame Menace, Mr. Hyde, MODOK, Nitro, Regent, Scorcher, Serpent Solutions, Squid, the UFOs, Whirlwind, Wizard, and Yellowjacket, and they were sent to attack Midtown Manhattan to lure out America's superheroes, where Zemo would then use the Darkhold to trap the island in Dark Force.
Number 3, ARKHAMverse. Recently, we have gotten another look at the ARKHAMverse with the new Suicide Squad game. The Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The new game was confirmed as being part of the established ARKHAMverse and features Suicide Squad members Harley Quinn, King Shark, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot, taking on one of their darkest missions yet. Amanda Waller has instructed Task Force X this time around to take down the Justice League. Which means, yeah, somehow this group of misfits is going to have to try and take down heroes like Superman and Wonder Woman. Yikes. Number 2, Assault on Arkham. This animated Batman direct-to-video film, Assault on Arkham, was kind of what I was hoping we'd get when we got the initial Suicide Squad film in terms of plot. This alternate animated version of the team is led by the merciless Amanda Waller, who captures the criminals and forces them to complete missions in order to have years removed from their sentence. They have no say, however, in whether or not they want to be involved, and a skeptical KG Beast even challenges Waller's promise that should they misbehave or deviate from their missions, their heads will be blown off via bombs she had implanted in their necks. No collars this time around. KG Beast learns the hard way that Waller is telling the truth, and after the rest of the team watches KG Beast's head get blown off, they agree to cooperate. Seems like a smart move. Their mission is to break into Arkham and recover a piece of intel. The mission, of course, does get messy as the squad try to break away from Waller's control, and King Shark also ends up getting his head blown off. Number 1, Future's End. The Future's End alternate world is full of alternate versions of some of your favorite characters, and it also happens to include an alternate version of the Suicide Squad as well. They appear in the new Suicide Squad Future's End one-shot, once again reunited and led by Amanda Waller. However, at the beginning of the comic, it's revealed that this version of the Suicide Squad was split up and imprisoned in Bel Rev, before Amanda Waller broke in to reassemble her team. It's also revealed in this one-shot that while imprisoned, her team has been through hell. Harley Quinn has been forcibly given the steroid Venom while imprisoned, turning her into a hulking, muscle-bound version of herself who spends most of her day raging out. They attempted to give Deadshot a gun for an arm, amputating one of his arms and attempting to replace it, which didn't work, and Black Manta had his brain fried after they downloaded Deathstroke's fighting skills into his brain.
Number 10, Catwoman. Okay, so let me start off by saying, I know Catwoman isn't always a straight-up supervillain. She has played both sides, but, you know, overall she sometimes is considered a villain, and so, you know, it's always interesting to see her and Batman whenever they decide to team up and put whatever differences they had aside and work together to stop a common threat. Of course, this relationship ended up turning into something much more, and the two of them even almost got married. Number 9, Ocean Master. This one was very brief, but still pretty interesting. And I wonder if it'll be something that will ever be explored more on screen once Aquaman 2 ever comes out to theaters. But in the comics, Arthur and his half-brother were forced to work together to stop someone called the Scavenger. He was looking for a device that would grant him immortality, but in the process, it destroys the ocean. So in order to stop that, Aquaman and Ocean Master join forces to stop the Scavenger. And they do. But after it was all done, Ocean Master vowed to destroy Aquaman once and for all. Ah, brotherly love. You gotta love it, am I right? Number 8, Harry Osborn. Now, Spider-Man 3 doesn't have the greatest reputation, and it's by no means a perfect film. Everyone knows that. But it still did have some cool scenes scattered throughout. And one of them was when Peter and Harry put aside their differences and worked together to take down Sandman and Venom. Seeing the best friends turned enemies work together one last time was a good way to really end their story arc. Their relationship was one of the best things about the trilogy, so fans were really happy to see it end in a satisfying way. And of course, good thing the two of them did work out their differences because Harry was unfortunately killed during that battle after being stabbed by Venom.
Number 7, Suicide Squad Black. This version of the team is still from Prime Earth, but features a new roster of villains slash anti-heroes, combined with some familiar faces. The team was once again led by Amanda Waller and featured characters that she forced into action, like the main squad. The members throughout consisted of El Diablo, Azucar, Gentleman Ghost, Juniper, Tiamat, Wither, Clarion the Witch Boy, and Enchantress. A lot of mystical and magical characters on this team. This alternate version of the team referred to themselves as Suicide Squad Black, and appeared in their own limited series titled Suicide Squad Black Files. Number 6. David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Ayer's version of the Suicide Squad in the DCEU featured many familiar and recurring faces when it comes to the squad's members. Led by Amanda Waller, the team featured Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Enchantress, El Diablo, Captain Boomerang, and Katana. Not only was the film dark when it came to exploring the origins of many of these characters, their struggles, and all they had suffered through to become the villains they were today, but it was also dark because of the fact that Enchantress almost succeeded in kind of taking over the world. In the end, the Suicide Squad did manage to save the day, but had to eliminate Enchantress and the innocent June Moon, whom she possesses. Number 5. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Gunn's The Suicide Squad will actually be a soft reboot of the former team. His team and his feel of the Suicide Squad will likely be a lot different than Ayer's, although it still seems to have plenty of that Suicide Squad chaos that most fans enjoy. This time around, the team has a lot more members, reminding us once again of why exactly the team is referred to as the Suicide Squad, despite having the official government name of Task Force X. Because at any point, anyone can die. This team is sent on only the toughest missions, referred to as suicide missions, because for many they would be considered impossible. You can expect there will be more violence, explosions, and deaths in comparison to the first film. Considering that many of the members of the squad won't make it out alive, this film is likely to be a much darker take on the Suicide Squad when it comes to cinematics. Currently, the team roster includes Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, The Thinker, Captain Boomerang, Blackguard, Polka Dot Man, Savant, King Shark, Weasel, Javelin, Ratcatcher 2, Soul Soria, TDK, and Mongol. Woo! With likely even more surprise members awaiting to be revealed throughout the duration of the film. Number 4. Telltale Games. In the Telltale Batman game, the Suicide Squad turn up once more, but this version of Amanda Waller's team is different when it comes to their roster. In the Telltale episode The Enemy Within, we learn that both Bane and Harley are on the team, and in a shocking twist, it's revealed that Catwoman is also part of the Suicide Squad. What? Which Waller is also using to apply pressure to Batman, which is pretty dark if you yourself are playing as the Dark Knight. And of course here, at this part, you are. Catwoman expresses of course that she did not join the team willingly and tries to warn Batman, but is shocked by Waller's collar before she can finish her sentence. Oh, and Amanda Waller also seems to want Batman to submit and also join her team. Pretty nuts.
Number 3. Kingpin. In one of Daredevil's greatest stories, Matt Murdock is sent to prison and everyone knows he is Daredevil. So, he is in prison with all of his greatest enemies. During the comic, titled The Devil Inside and Out, Matt is forced to work with Wilson Fisk in order to survive, and the result is a very entertaining series. It was one of the first times we really saw a hero get put into this position, like in prison and everyone knows who he is. It was entertaining, and to be honest, I was really hoping to see this adapted in the Daredevil TV show one day, because it would have been so freaking cool to see that version of Daredevil and that version of Kingpin work together in prison. But now, that will probably never happen. Still, pick up the comic if you haven't already, it's a really good read. Number 2. whole DC multiverse. During the comic Crisis on Infinite Earths, basically every hero and villain were forced to work together in order to save the multiverse and stop the Anti-Monitor. Because, I mean, they didn't really have much of a choice, because there wouldn't really be a world for them to save or destroy, so they were forced to work together. It was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and it was really cool to see. Number 1, Deathstroke. Deathstroke has, he's teamed up with people before, but I am going to talk about the time when he did it in Arrow Season 5. In that season, Slade was locked up in a prison on Lienyu, and Oliver goes to him for help to take on Prometheus and his team. It was a truly epic moment, because a lot of fans never thought we would ever see Slade return on the show because of the restrictions DC puts on it. Oliver and Slade used to be friends. I mean, Slade trained him. But then Shadow died and Slade went crazy with Mirakuru, so their relationship took a turn. But it was so cool to see them reunite and team up together again on the same island where they first met and trained together. It felt like everything came full circle. The Arrow Season 5 finale is seriously one of the best episodes the show has ever done. And seeing Oliver and Slade team up made it even better. I still just get chills thinking about it.
In at number 10, Thanos and the Thing. The saying, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," rings ever so true when it comes to the odd pairing of Thanos and the Thing. Ben Grimm has been part of the Fantastic Four for a long time and is well aware of the horrible villains that exist throughout the Marvel Universe. As a result of his space explorations with the Fantastic Four, he's come into contact with Thanos on a number of occasions. Recognizing just how dangerous the Mad Titan is, the Fantastic Four have shut down a number of evil plans Thanos had up his big gold glove. However, during the Secret Wars timeline, the narrative between the Thing and Thanos kinda changed. At the start, Ben Grimm was acting as the vast wall to protect the God Emperor Doom and was in charge of keeping out the people who sought to overthrow him. However, in comes Thanos, who took a different approach to breaching the wall. Instead, he leveled with the Thing and helped him escape this boring service of just acting like a wall. Thanos reminded Ben that the world was not right and that it needed him. Whether or not these words came with ill intentions, it was still a superhero supervillain team up against Dr. Doom that you wouldn't believe would ever exist. In at number 9, Dracula and the X-Men. The X-Men and Dracula have gone head to head on a number of occasions in the past. The Lord of Vampires even attempted to force Storm into marrying him. Gross. Although after some time it turned out they hated his son. You see, his son was planning a much more evil takeover than anything his father had ever attempted. Seeking to take his father's spot as the top vampire supervillain, he engineered this biological weapon. The weapon's purpose was to turn regular civilians into bloodthirsty vampires. In a surprising turn of events though, the X-Men, Dracula, and even Blade joined forces in order to restore order to the world. Although he was able to turn Jubilee right before they could defeat him, Dracula did give her an amulet that would combat this new fear of sunlight. Consider it a gift of appreciation to the X-Men. Still an unlikely team up. In at number 8, Nova and Carnage. During the event known as Axis, the Uncanny Avengers were attempting to stop the Red Skull who had stolen Charles Xavier's brain. I know, gross, right? In comes Magneto, who demolishes the villain, but accidentally unlocks this psionic energy within him that releases Onslaught into the universe. Now with Onslaught being the Uncanny Avengers' biggest threat, the Scarlet Witch decided to reverse the alignments of the heroes and villains. Carnage just happened to be amongst them when this went down, so in a strange turn of events, Carnage actually started to befriend Nova. Although this odd team up only lasted for a moment and purely out of circumstance, they were working together. Eventually the spell was reversed though, and Carnage went back to his usual crazy self.
Number 7, Alice. Alice and Kate Kane have a complicated relationship. I mean, considering, they're sisters. While the show Batwoman isn't perfect, one of the best things about it is the dynamic between Kate and Alice, and that was especially true when they were forced to work together in Season 1, Episode 16, titled Through the Looking Glass. Kate is forced to work with Alice to break Mouse out of Arkham Asylum. Seeing the two of them work together and break into Arkham was very cool, and seeing how their distinct styles clashed. I mean, Kate made sure that Alice wouldn't kill anyone, which Alice usually likes to do. Of course, it ends with Kate double-crossing her, but hey, it was still cool to see it while it lasted, and that dynamic is something fans are really gonna miss since Kate is no longer going to be in the show in Season 2.
In at number 3, Super Skrull and Nova. This is a true tale of how just one team up could alter a character's whole reality. See, Super Skrull had been on the receiving end of mockery by his people for a long time after failing to take down the Fantastic Four. However, during the events of Annihilation, he put this behind him in order to protect his people not just from the Annihilation wave, but soon Ultron as well. Super Skrull could not have done this alone though. Teaming up with Nova and his team of cosmic heroes, Super Skrull was finally able to redeem himself. With the help of Nova, he was able to return to his home, but this time he was praised for his efforts. They even made him a representative for intergalactic affairs. In at number 2, Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange. Sounds like a reality show. Right before Secret Wars, the majority of the Marvel multiverse was just beginning to collapse. Each unique world began crashing into one another, leaving almost nothing left. This catastrophic problem would require the universe's greatest minds to set aside their differences and combine their efforts in order to save, well, everything and everyone. The two people we're speaking about is Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, along with some help by Molecule Man of course. The Beyonders happen to be the cause of all of these issues, so both men decided the only way was to steal their power. Eventually they succeeded, but this also enacted the new reign of the God Emperor Doom, who put Doctor Strange as kind of his right hand man, making Strange essentially a sheriff that would uphold Doom's new laws. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Annihilus and the Avengers. As we reach the end of this list, it's funny to look at how some of these villains go from such evil plots to becoming key players in assisting the superheroes. Annihilus is one of those stories. Once known as the largest threat in the Marvel Universe, he used his cosmic control rod combined with his annihilation wave to leave nothing but total destruction throughout the cosmos. Eventually Nova and his alliance was able to put a stop to this madness, but Annihilus would soon return. However, this time he was in the form of a larvae which would regrow into his previous self. Soon enough though, Annihilus was now part of the Intergalactic Councils during the events of Infinity. This was the largest council of nations across space and even included the Avengers. At the time, the Avengers' main focus was attempting to stop the Builders from wiping out the universe, and as part of his new role, Annihilus lended a hand.
But coming in at number 10 is Hydra. To call Hydra a team isn't exactly a full truth. This organization is and has been comprised of not just notable villains like the Red Skull, Baron von Strucker, Gorgon, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Viper, Arnim Zola, Baron Helmut Zemo, Kingpin, Taskmaster, Absorbing Man, Bullseye, Crossbones, and many others, but there are also countless nameless henchmen and agents who all spout Hail Hydra. A notable mention going to Bob from the Deadpool comics. You're a good guy. As one of the commenters on part 1 made note of, Hydra isn't so powerful in the sense that they can absolutely obliterate foes, but they have something a lot of villains seem to lack: patience. The slow burn is their bread and butter, with slowly enacted plans that eventually lead them to almost secure world domination. Characters like Thor could punch as many dudes as he wants, but it's the members of Hydra who we don't even know about that are the real problem. What is actually insane to me is that Hydra has actually been around since pre-human time. It was a group of cold-blooded reptile-like aliens that planted the seeds that would eventually give rise to Hydra, with our earliest records of Hydra dating back to 3rd Dynasty Egypt. And at number 9, the Marauders. I think that a lot of mutant villain teams can give the Avengers a headache. As a commenter said in the last video, there is a reason that villains like Magneto and Apocalypse say that mutants are the superior species. Well, one of the cooler mutant villain groups out there, in my humble opinion, would be the Marauders. Originally, the Marauders were a group of mutant mercenaries working for the villain Mr. Sinister. They were formed by Gambit in order to eradicate the population of physically undesirable mutants known as the Morlocks. To accomplish this task, Gambit called in Sabretooth, Arclight, Harpoon, Malice, Scalp Hunter, Scrambler, Vertigo, Riptide, Blockbuster, and Prism. The team has also been led by Magneto, Grey Crow, and Mystique at different points in time, and has also had villains like Ares, Chimera, Omega Sentinel, Polaris, Sunfire, and other unnamed soldiers. And as you might have guessed from Mr. Sinister's involvement, there have also been clones of these characters on the team as well. This group of mercenaries may not seem like the most powerful, but with such ruthless and unforgiving characters, they could easily do some damage to the Avengers. On a side note, if I hear someone bring up Rune King Thor again as if he was ever on the Avengers team with all that power, I want to lose it. He was around for like 5 minutes and it was to stop Ragnarok and then he just went away. In at number 8 is the Hellfire Club. Similar to Hydra, again, the Hellfire Club are not exactly a team, but kind Kind of. And also like Hydra, they play a much more subtle game in terms of their villainous ways. The Hellfire Club has been around since the 1700s, beginning as a British social elite club that would provide luxuries to its members that were not exactly legal or not exactly morally upstanding. But they had a secondary goal of putting together their financial wealth and political power to influence the world from the background for their own goals. Well, it has many members in different cities, some of which are just regular wealthy people. The group is run by its inner circle, many of whom are indeed powered, and more often than not, they are mutants. This group takes their names after different chess pieces with the black and white kings, queens, bishops, and knights. Now we've already talked about one of them with the White Queen Emma Frost, my bae. But there have been many other members and not all of them have been villainous. So specifically we're going to talk about the more evil ones. Names like Sebastian Shaw, Elias Bogan, Blackheart, Tom Cassidy, Mystique, Magneto, Trevor Fitzroy, Norman Osborn, Ezekiel Stane, Jason Wingard, Mountjoy, and Emma Steed have all been part of the Hellfire Club. While it isn't really an evil group anymore, with most of the current group made up of heroes, in its prime days of villainy, it absolutely caused problems for the world's heroes. Whoa. Are you subscribed to Top 10 Nerd? I mean, if you're watching this video, I can't imagine there's a reason you shouldn't be. If you like this content, make sure you do subscribe and stay tuned because we put out more videos just like this one every single day.
In at number 7, Galactus and Cosmic Ghost Rider. We know this list is supposed to be the top team-ups you won't believe exist, but I just have to add that this team-up is by far the coolest team-up ever, without a doubt. First of all, you have this possible future where Thanos just completely decimates the Earth, taking out all of the heroes, or so he thought. In comes Frank Castle, who survives and is now fueled by revenge. He cuts a deal with Mephisto to host the Spirit of Vengeance, although in his hunt for Thanos on Earth, he realizes that the Mad Titan had already left. Then you get the supervillain Galactus arriving to Earth, also in search of Thanos after barely making it through their battle. And the two make quite the team. In at number 6, Norman Osborn and the Sentry. This is a team up again that only really occurred out of pure circumstance. When learning about the details, you actually really start to sympathize with the Sentry and his inner struggles. After the final battle of the Secret Invasion, Norman Osborn swooped in, dispatching the Skrull Queen to be viewed as a national hero. Now with this prominent position in the public eye, he was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. In this position, he formed what was known as the Dark Avengers. The majority of the team was comprised of villains, with the Sentry being one of the few superheroes who agreed to stay. You see, Norman had convinced Bob Reynolds that he understood his internal battles with the Void. Not only did he show the Sentry compassion, but he promised that he could help him keep control over it. In at number 5, Hank Pym and Ultron. Standing as one of the definitely more unique hero-villain team-ups, Hank Pym viewed his creation of Ultron as one of his greatest regrets, and after the events of Rage of Ultron, both Hank and Ultron had merged with one another. There's actually still a belief that traces of Hank can still be found within Ultron, even though he denied this when confronted by Adam Warlock in Infinity Countdown. This isn't necessarily a team-up for the sake of fighting off a greater force, but rather an attempt by Hank Pym to stop Ultron. Nonetheless, even forced together, the two had to still work with each other from time to time. In at number 4, DEATHLOK and Uncanny X-Force. With the Marvel Universe having so many alternate timelines and possible futures, the one that saw the rise of Deathloks was perhaps the most grim. Many of the Marvel heroes were converted into Deathloks, which became a mandate just like the Superhuman Registration Act. Cut to present day, the Deathloks arrived attempting to steal Phantom X's artificial portable biome, which was called the World. Deathlok Prime was able to overpower these new violent tendencies with logic and reasoning. With his newfound hope, he sought to help Phantom X against his former team. He actually succeeds in protecting the world, and as a result of his good deed, he teams up with the X-Force. Over time, Deathlok established himself as a friend of the X-Men, and even began to lecture at Logan's Jean Grey School.
Number 3, the CABAL. In the last list, we spoke about the group called the CABAL that was formed by Namor the Submariner to combat the multiversal incursions. But for part 2, we're going to talk about the other CABAL. This version of the CABAL was a secret group created alongside the Dark Avengers by Norman Osborn when he became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he renamed to Hammer. This group was basically the villainous version of the Illuminati, and it consisted of some pretty powerful villains. Obviously, we have Norman Osborn himself, who in in my opinion, is probably the weakest member of the group in terms of raw power. Because next to him, we had Emma Frost, an Omega-class telepath, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, and sometimes headmistress of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. We also had Namor the Submariner, who, well, I think he kinda sucks, but he's the king of Atlantis, Loki of Asgard, who was the whole reason the Avengers formed in the first place, the Hood, who was a skilled sorcerer and powerful crime lord, and as the icing on the cake, they had Dr. Doom of Latveria, who really doesn't even need much of an introduction. Taskmaster was also part of this group as well for a little bit, so yes, this team was highly capable. Unfortunately for them, their alliance was tenuous at best, as it usually is with villainous teams. And at number 2 is the Legion of Doom. So we talked about the crime syndicate from the DC universe, but what would be even more compelling than that would be to see how a group of actual Prime Earth DC villains would do against the Avengers. And why not pick the Legion of Doom as that group? The Legion of Doom is made up of probably the most prominent of the Justice League's individual villains. I mean, we've got Lex Luthor founding this team and being backed up by Black Manta, Cheetah, Gorilla Grodd, the Joker, and Sinestro. But that's just the original group. Currently, it consists of Amazo, Black Hand, Brainiac, Captain Boomerang, Captain Cold, Golden Glider, Heatwave, Punchline, Scarecrow, Vandal Savage, and Weather Wizard, plus all the original members who I just mentioned. And it at one point even had Black Adam, Mr. Freeze, and Ra's al Ghul. This team would absolutely crush the Avengers, and that's hard for me to even say because I definitely prefer Marvel over DC. There's just no doubt in my mind. Well, except, of course, if Joker does his usual thing and betrays them, or whatever, or they can't get along, or the heroes have to win because that's just how it goes with comic books. Barring those three things, they would crush. Anyways, in for number 1, and for my last trick, I will talk about a group of villains from neither Marvel or DC. No, for our number 1 spot, we're gonna talk about the VILTRUM Empire from Image Comics' Invincible series. Again, a loose definition of the word team, but I mean, if you're all from the same planet with the same goal of ensuring the survivability of your race, that's kind of like a team, a very large team. But the Avengers have faced off against entire races of species before, so I don't know. While they have faced off against other races, the Viltrumites, this is a race of absolutely mind-bogglingly strong humanoids who are next to impossible to take down and who just come back stronger after they heal. Just 3 Viltrumites were able to fly through a planet and completely obliterate it. The Grand Regent of the Viltrumites himself, Thrag, was able to tank some of the most powerful of the heroes that the Earth had to offer, and even the strongest of his own race were absolutely terrified of him. I mean, the final climactic battle between Invincible and Thrag saw the two going punch for punch inside of our sun, and it still took them a good little while to actually being worn down by that fight. This is a race of Superman-like beings the Avengers would not stand a tiny little chance against.